Hey everybody, Danny here with another author reading video, but this time it's for my second book of my action fantasy series, The Cycle of Eden, and this one is titled Two Sides of Corruption. So we're going to be starting with chapter 3 this time for this author reading, because I think chapter 3 is when this book's subject and overall tone really sets in. So we're going to be starting with this, and it's called The Countdown Begins. Dawn never fails to come. The once derelict all now had a home to wake up in. No more having to worry during the night, no more having to worry about tomorrow, and no more roving about aimlessly. Yet, for a particular hero, his worries were far from over. As Seth awakened in his nest, he shuffled a bit in his blankets until he felt a weird crusty surface. He flinched as his drowsy eyes seemingly saw a black blotch. He rubbed them awake from sleep and recoiled back when he realized it was dried black blood staining his bed sheets. That's when he noticed a sticky feeling when his face contorted. He rushed to his small bathroom feverishly to examine himself in the mirror. The questionable substance leaked from his nose, trailing down the lower half of his face. His fingers traced the blood, but it wasn't quite blood. It was thicker, like an extra layer of skin was dried to his jaw. Suddenly, who he saw in the mirror was no longer himself. Instead, he was staring back at the face of evil. Party a little too hard last night, brother? Seeing Cain's face triggered something inside of him, and Seth almost collapsed from the pain. The bathroom itself transformed into a dark cage of barbed wire with no escape. He was hunched forward, clawing where his heart was, crying streams of the same heavy sap into the bathroom sink. Every breath he took felt like sickles were swimming in his bloodstream, as if his veins and tubes branching from his heart were clogged. His own body was betraying him, his lungs desperately begging for air, but altering the oxygen into poison. He managed to cry out in guttural torment, and found his eyes glued to the demonic reflection. Don't tell me you lost already. I think I'll torture you for a little while. Seth's curses were muffled by how loudly his sibling cackled in delight. He was breaking down in every way. The very moment he felt safe, the very moment he found what he was looking for. And then it was gone. In an instant, everything was back to normal. No more pain, no more Cain. All that remained was the morbid residue staining his sink and floor. The hero stood in a daze, breathing heavily and sweating profusely like he stepped out of the shower. His hands were twitching, his body was cold as ice, and he swore he heard things behind him. He swore he saw that shadow just move. He needed to go. After getting dressed and cleaning up his freakish mess, Seth opened the door to some curing fresh air. The healing rays of the sun warmed his frigid skin, and he soaked in its comfort for a few minutes. But he couldn't push it out of his head. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Cain was inside of him, watching him, toying with him. But how? Had it been there the entire time, corrupting him? No. It had to do with whatever happened at the split, when he was powerless before him. A shiver traveled down his spine as memories reformed unconsciously. Before this, he had a plan for today. What was it again? The sniper took a gander around his elevated space, and his schedule reappeared in his brain when he saw some leftover ammo he received as a present. Letting out some stress would hopefully help, so Seth decided to do some much-needed target practice. Conveniently, the marketplace was just a block away from his abode, and he planned on making a stop for some objects to shoot. Social interaction would also clear his mind. Maybe hearing others' problems could help drown out his own. Not likely. A doubtful thought answered from the dark corners of his brain, which wasn't very like him. Seth treaded down his spiral staircase in a muddle of worry. He didn't even realize he made it to the bottom until he saw Chase pop out of an upmarket doghouse on the left side of the bottom step. His canine friend yawned, flashing his fangs as his jaw stretched just right. "Wanna step any louder down the steps, Tubby? I could hear you from the top," he groaned. "They made you a special doghouse?" Seth chuckled as he took in the lofty hut. It was quaint and simple, fitting of Chase's tastes, and had plenty of space for him. Some humans on Neo Eden would die to live in such a house. It even had a doggy door made specially for him. "You think I want to climb those steps every day?" Seth the dog. "Well, I need to get back in practice, and apparently shape, and you are going to help me. So, go get some breakfast, and I'll meet you back here," commanded Seth. "Are we going to do some rounds?" he barked excitedly. Seth clapped to get the dog more pumped. "Heck yeah, we are! I'm heading to the market to get some props. See you in a bit." The normalcy was a nice change of pace from before the split, and especially earlier this morning. While collecting his essentials, he chit-chatted a bit with some folks along the way, but the uneasiness stalked him like a shadow. To everyone else, the glowing jewel in the center of Final Heaven continued to shine as normal, but to the bearer, he could feel it had weakened. He returned to the empty sections in the opposite direction of the market, wearing the mask of a smile to hide his discomfort from his people. As he set up his targets, nothing out of the ordinary occurred, which scared him more than anything. It was an ever-present threat living inside of him. The fact that it could happen at any moment, the lack of control over his own person, was what drove his anxiety to new levels. He returned to his vantage point and equipped his sniper rifle to start with some long-distance shots before Chase arrived. As usual, he would have to adjust his range and magnification for the set distance. The moment his eyeball looked through the optic, his vision saw Kane's red eyes staring back at him in a field of burning corpses. "I see you," taunted the all-too-real voice before laughing menacingly. The trained sniper winced back from his trusted partner, almost throwing it across the floor if he didn't catch himself in time. He remained still for a couple of minutes, staring down at the scope to another world like it was speaking to him. "Come on, Seth, get a hold of yourself," he consoled himself, finding it hard to even trust closing his eyes for a brief moment of concentration. Hesitantly, he lifted the death dealer back up, peeking before fully enclosing his sight. For the first time in his life, the lens of his scope felt foreign to him as he entered its magnified outlook. This was supposed to be his safe place. Being behind a scope always meant he was away from danger, but now he didn't know what to think. Down the rolling green plains, he quickly located his allocated prey and took aim. After a month-long hiatus, the sky sounded with cloudless thunder. Even the recoil of his rifle against his shoulder felt awkward, but even more unbelievable was the fact that he missed such an easy target. No way in a million years would he have missed that shot before. According to where he saw the mulligan hit the dirt, which hurt to say, he was about 2 inches off in distance. He swore he accounted for everything. It usually came naturally to him. Was he really that rusty? Or was it something more? Warming up, I see. For once, a voice that wasn't in his head came from the friendly face of Vargas, who silently made his way up his steps while he was looking within. Seth acted with his usual jovial personality. Yeah, I gotta resharpen myself. I've had my butt beaten one too many times by Tina already. I think that is what needs to be warmed up, Vargas said, pointing towards the giant crystal above them. Seth sighed. Yeah, one step at a time. Besides, I think it's enjoying the vacation. I felt a little, disconnected from it, said Seth, diverting his eyes so his friend couldn't see them. You know, I'd recommend settling that sooner than later. Speaking of which, I wanted to go over the next steps I had planned for Final Heaven, proposed Vargas. He hobbled over to Seth and pulled out a blueprint from his trench coat. It was a diagram showing a hexagon distributed into 6 different triangle districts. The manager explained how his next plan of action was to prioritize a military base and a sector based around knowledge. Other than that, he felt it was now necessary to complete the surrounding walls to properly defend the stronghold. No one knew when the enemy may take action, especially since they had settled on Neo-Eden far longer. Seth agreed with all his suggestions and basically appointed Vargas as the mayor, no longer needing Seth's approval for decisions. Seth saw his mentor as the perfect candidate for his position, a person whose good morals were fortified by surviving hardships the man wanted no one else to experience. Seth was fine serving at what most would deem an influential figurehead, for he had enough going on as it was. Vargas never thought in his dismal life that he would be supervising an entire community, but Sodom gave him a great example of how different he wanted Final Heaven to be. Before making his departure, Vargas stopped at the top step and turned towards Seth. "Hey Seth, are you alright?" If anyone knew how horrific a trial with Cain was to endure, it was the man who once served the era of darkness years ago. Ever since he renounced the dark ways, his connection was severed, meaning he couldn't manipulate or sense its energies. He just knew the pain all too well, for it never left. He remembered the feeling of being a tool for a cause he never believed in. Maybe the seed of light was different. Maybe it was able to preserve Seth's soul? Yeah, I'm good, Vargas. I'm just taking it all in, you know? A lot has changed now. Things are getting more serious. I'm just glad I have you all with me, stated the hero genuinely. Vargas offered a light smile before taking his leave. Seth seemed like himself. In a few days, he would be all caught up. Only one question remained in Seth's foggy head. Why did he lie? Nightfall was coming, and Seth was still out perfecting his aim, not only with his rifle, but also with his newly acquired throwing knives from Millie. The setting sun glinted off the polished steel as it punctured tin cans and wooden posts. After familiarizing himself with their weight, he worked on his reactive quick throws, whipping them out in rapid succession from his chest belt. With a tink and a thunk, his targets were pinpointed as he practiced from various ranges. Lastly, he unloaded the remaining bullet in his chamber of his rifle to end the day. A loud pop sounded off in the distance, disturbing the nearby wildlife inhabiting the peaceful grasslands. For some reason, he felt a bad vibe after making the shot, and he studied the trajectory of the bullet. The marksman walked down the bullet's flight path and noticed his aim was off in an odd way. It wasn't dead center. It was sloppy to the point he knew there was no way he screwed up that bad. His final target was a poster, with a human outline sketched on it, pinned to a tree. His eyes chose the head when he pulled the trigger. Yet somehow, the bullet traveled to the left of its torso. He became fixated on the bullet hole, his fingers tracing to its destination, the heart. It was back. The pain, like a white flash of lava, replacing his blood, making him grip his chest as he cried out, suddenly falling to the ground. His mouth was foaming. He couldn't breathe. It hurt. It hurt so damn much. His eyes lied to him, showing him a fatal memory of what lay dormant deep in his heart. It was on that fateful day when the young, innocent boy got his first taste of darkness. When his first shot at being a hero was deflected with corrupted essence, only to penetrate his body instead. He should have perished that day, but that's when the voices in his head told him he did. He was dead the very moment he experienced that accursed poison. His head exploded into a splitting headache, making him writhe into a fetal position as an unforgettable and grating voice drowned his purpose. Do you remember this pain? Do you understand your destiny? It will eat you. It will rip and tear until you are mangled flesh doing my bidding. Don't say I didn't warn you. You want to know the best part, brother? I don't even have to do anything. You will submit to it. You will kill them. Kill them all, and you will enjoy it. Your destiny is mine to toy with, Seth. You are my puppet. Now, wake up! He was in the grass, clenching his head when he suddenly was back in control. He was clammy, trembling like a lost child. Where was he? Why was he here? He felt like he was kidnapped, taken far away from his own self. A light attracted his irritated eyes and burned away the choking cold holding him hostage. The seed of light was staring at him from inside Final Heaven. It was worried, as it should be. It happened again. Another freak episode while he was all alone. Was that the reason? Or would it happen when he was with his loved ones too? He didn't know. But what he did know was that they couldn't know. He could never tell them. Not yet. Because all their hope would die. Die on his burdened shoulders. Which is why he must carry on. And this is the tone I was talking about. The tone is totally different from the previous book. Because in the previous book, you always had a sense of comfort with Seth, as you know, the main hero and such. But in this one, that is not the vibe. While Seth was in his coma, Valentina took it upon herself to try and learn how to properly communicate with Chase. During her visiting hours, she spent most of her time taking notes of the dog's behavior when responding to certain phrases through much trial and error. She would soon discover that it's more of understanding Chase as an individual than the actual auditory process. Progress was being made when learning his personality, filling in his tone with the words the expressive animal would demonstrate. He certainly was a character, and the learner grasped the concept of asking him questions and evaluating his answers through this trick. Thank goodness Seth's perch was high up. Otherwise, everyone would have thought she was crazy the way she spoke out loud in a room with only a dog and an unconscious man. Their conversations ranged from impractical silliness to cultural differences. But over time, one of their first deep discussions molded about their own morality. So, Valentina began while strolling around Seth's room, thinking, why Seth? Is there a reason other than he rescued you that you follow him loyally? He dreams of a world of peace and love, the dog started. A world he read about called Old Eden. His will to revive a world that may have never existed gives me hope. He's the only human I've known to ever have a dream so large. During their lessons, Chase always made sure to use more emotive gestures, pointing and exaggerating noises. The human would always nod, almost like a trained pet at this rate, and try to comprehend what the dog was conveying. His dreams? His way of thinking, right? So what this place is, this is what Seth wanted? He just acts like such a dummy sometimes, she said, looking over at the resting fool. What about you, Tina? What do you fight for? The dog asked, thrusting his pointy nose towards her. Me? What do I dream of? I don't really know. I'm just here to fight for the cause, I suppose, she responded with an unenthusiastic shrug. Chase let out a low howl, throwing his paws like punches while looking at her. What do I fight for? She asked in confirmation, which the tutor nodded. Well, funnily enough, I've been thinking about that too. As you know, I've never believed in the good of others until this adventure. Seth, you, Vargas, Desi. I can see the hope Seth saw now, I guess. And now with Duo, I want to fight for the good in everyone. I want to protect those who can't fight for themselves, the innocent. Be an example for the future of Eden, announced Valentina profoundly. Seth chose correctly then, the dog woofed, looking between her and his human, and she swore he raised his eyebrows suggestively. Valentina laughed. Wait, are you pairing me with him? Shut up. Quit acting like you know what you're talking about. She waved him off that day, but this conversation in particular stood out the most to her because she learned more about herself. She learned she had grown and there was still more room for further growth as a person. She needed to break away from passed-on ideologies. There is more to this world now than just everyday survival and despair. Underneath all the violence and grime, they had all found something worth protecting. A week after his reawakening, Seth assessed his progress to being back to normal and decided it was time to reinforce his evasive maneuvers. Since then, he had seen Valentina a few times each day at different intervals. They saw one another usually during breaks with the kids, but sometimes the graceful lady studied his technique, in a hopeful manner even. Early in the morning, Seth prepared himself with stretches diligently before hitting the big leagues with Valentina as his trainer. Her body was built for war, while his was softer than mashed potatoes mixed with warm butter. Life is suffering, he thought to himself, knowing pain was going to be his best friend soon. He made his way to the tranquil garden, rounding the streets he was becoming oddly familiar with. His days were becoming like a routine, like how he always made sure to wave hello to the owners of Millie's Mill. Today, however, he got an idea to get on Valentina's good side as he greeted them. A calmness enveloped him the moment he entered the lovely space. A few bystanders were sitting at benches, conversing quietly amongst themselves. Birds chirped and hopped across the ground, digging for seed and bugs hiding under the blissful blooms. In fact, this juncture looked and felt like a giant birdhouse with how often the flying beans cycled in and out of the many holes aesthetically poked in the ceiling. Seth could tell by its open-ended concept that whoever designed this space planned to expand it further when appropriate. Within the same pavilion as last time, Valentina was already warming up with some push-ups, probably reaching a number Seth couldn't even comprehend. He made sure to keep a safe distance away this time before announcing his arrival. "Hey, Miss Busybody, what's a new record today?" 253, she breathed out, with an annoyed huff before getting up. She made sure to blow her hanging bangs out of her face to make sure her next words were understood loud and clear. "So now you owe me 47 more. The man gawked at her. In his current state, he probably could only do 47 alone. "You're telling me you did 200 push-ups in this one sitting?" he asked in disbelief. The lady nodded, her face dead serious without showing any signs of wavering. He was almost tempted to call her bluff, but then again, he didn't want to see where that timeline may go. He saw himself shoved into a garbage bin rolling down a mountain. "Anyways, I actually came here for a reason. I need to get back in shape, get my moves back, and who better to train with than the best martial artist?" He complimented smoothly. And what do I get out of this besides another free punching bag?" she asked with a smug look. "Pfft, maybe the challenge you felt back in Saddam?" He jested, to which she responded scoffing. "Listen, there's a shop on the way here, Millie's Mill, that has some equipment I think you'd put to good use. It'll be like another step in your martial arts to master." "The weapon shop? You clearly don't know anything about mastering martial arts if you think a weapon can take me further," scowled the scarlet-haired vixen. "Listen, the owner and I are good friends, and she is able to infuse anything with the power of the elements, including gloves that fit you," he said with his eyebrows raised. A moment of silence lingered before Valentina finally responded. "You have my attention." Seth proceeded to take Valentina to Millie's Mill, introducing her to his friend and her mother. Millie's mother didn't miss a beat in offering Seth a cookie, to which his soon-to-be trainer glared at him for. For the first time in his life, the sweet-toothed man would deny the offer. Psych! The moment Valentina got distracted by Millie showing off her secret stash, he nabbed a cookie from the tray and crunched it in one scrumptious bite. Valentina was enamored at the idea of combining her skills with the powers of fire, ice, and lightning. Lightning blitzes, flaming flurries, ice spikes, and so many more conceptualizations for combos could be improved or furthered with such capabilities. Millie fed off her enthusiasm and said she could have them done in a week or two, due to having to fashion out specific grades of gauntlets from scratch. Valentina was very appreciative and told her to take her time. The fact that this was even possible was beyond amazing. Her father would have been ecstatic to test his limits with such power. Valentina was going to practice with Seth either way, but this juicy bonus was more than enough to satisfy her. They returned to the garden, discussing what his new regimen would be for the coming days. She was aiming to have him back to his normal self in 2 weeks. It mostly depended on how motivated he was to achieve this, which shouldn't be a problem. You aren't the only one needing training. That day, I didn't even land a hit on him. He was faster and stronger than I could imagine, even if I was wounded. He was exactly what my father had been preparing me for, mentioned Valentina despondently. He got lucky. Trust me, if I could take his arm, You could hold your own against him, the faded man declared. You did that? She asked, surprised. I did, and King got lucky that day too. If only I could have ended it then. So many lives could have been saved, sighed Seth. Valentina watched the easygoing goofball have a serious demeanor about him. Regret, anger, and unheard sorrow were clear as day on his face. It made her slightly uncomfortable coming from him of all people, but she could tell he wanted this more than anybody, even her. Then let's finish this job together this time. It's time to get to work, she instructed him with the same level of determination. With that started a new partnership that would grow fruitfully throughout the next few weeks. Seth could almost relate it to his childhood, sessions every single day on the clock. His time on Neo Eden removed the concept of a schedule from his repertoire, stripping him of necessary stepping stones. Things were different now, very different, because he was no longer just fighting for his own survival, but the world's. It was rough at first, but soon the klutz was keeping up with her again after just a week. The bruises, welts, and busted lips he received gradually decreased. It so happened that pain was an excellent motivator, a lesson his mother used to build him up too. It all made sense now, the clarity of every single decision and step she made for him. However, Valentina wasn't going to let the young god get away with just evasiveness. She added her own spice to the mix, instructing him on how and when to deliver blows that were less likely to leave him open. The rangefighter's technique was piss poor, managing to find ways to harm himself more than the dummies they used. He needed discipline, he needed precision, so the master took a different approach, more fitting to his strengths. The man didn't have the tenacity to be powerful, but his eyes were rehearsed in pinpointing flaws. Together, they gathered firewood that needed to be chopped for the community, which she always serviced at the same time she trained. Much like his shooting, she demonstrated with ease that depending on how and where you struck something or someone, they would break. As she pointed to a specific spot she wanted him to focus on, she split the hardy lumber with a single chop to start her batch. Seth's attempt didn't go nearly as smoothly, practically breaking his hand as the woman taunted his masculinity. Comparatively, Valentina's body was toned into a weapon, the fastest, sharpest, and strongest of them all. Yet, even if he saw the world differently, even if he didn't have the drive to be strong, Seth was still able to achieve such mastery, and this trait intrigued her. So Seth, where did you learn to move like you do? Asked the curious fighter. Aha! I knew you fell for my moves, he exclaimed in a cocky manner. Valentina scoffed. Well, it's not every day a man can keep up with me. Probably not every day a man this handsome shows up too, eh? But for real, it isn't that surprising really. I learned everything from my mom. How to shoot, how to stay safe, how to be patient, you name it. Apparently even her leadership skills may have rubbed off on me. Who knows? He chuckled at the end. She laughed to herself. I would have never believed you if you told me that back at Saddam. That you were the son of the Reclaimer commander this whole time, she said, still astonished really. There was a time I didn't even want to believe it. Thought I didn't deserve it. But that's selfish. Something my mother wasn't. He commented adamantly, mainly for himself. To Valentina, it was refreshing to see a man show his softer side so openly. It was comforting to see a man respect his mother so much. You speak so highly of her. My father did the same when he spoke about your mother, even after years of no communication. I knew nothing about this until Sid showed up in New Haven when I was in my teens. I heard him say that Haven was lost, and everything just spiraled downward from then on, she recalled. It seems we were cornered like rats anywhere we went on Neo Eden then. I only ever heard tales of your father. My mother told me he was the strongest and one of the most trusted members she had, making him the perfect missionary to spread Reclaimer influence, recalled Seth, sharing his own stories about her parent. I wonder if he could have made a difference, staying in Haven, staying where you all were? He always said Eve was the only person who was on par with his skills, that she was unbreakable. How could people like that lose? Asked Valentina. Seth took a moment before responding. She was fighting her son, someone she loved, much like your father sacrificed everything for you. I don't think we could understand the turmoil that weighs on a parent in such situations, replied Seth understandingly. And that's exactly it. For years my father trained me in the shadows, in secret. Everyone knew my father's strength, but no one suspected for a second I had the same skills. My training led up to this moment, yet I couldn't do it. I couldn't repay him, said Valentina, expressing her regrets openly. This was another similarity she and Seth shared. Both were patiently forged into tempered steel, but heated in different furnaces and polished by different blacksmiths. This was someone who could finally understand him. But could she understand the shadow that haunted him? Would she lose faith in him, knowing he was susceptible to their enemy? It was this inkling of doubt, brought upon him by said leech, that kept his lips sealed upon further notice. After a while, Duo would join in their training sessions at Ria's request. During this time, the two blessed children bonded over their differences, which presumably made them alike when compared to others around them. He was the night to her day, so whenever she was way over her head about something, he leveled her out. She was the heat thawing his icy heart, warmly motivating and intriguing his dampened tastes. Ria found that Duo's weaknesses were what made him strong, unique. He was rather deep, profound in his own special way, considering things others wouldn't. Duo was simple-minded and saw Ria in the perfect light. She could do no wrong. She could say no wrong, and if she did, his blade would make you think twice. He was that loyal to her, like a knight guarding a princess, because she always had the best of intentions for them. Ria, and sometimes Seth and Valentina when Ria rarely didn't know an answer, were the only people Duo opened up to. They were the only people he could trust with his incoherent thoughts. That's all he needed, his little family, for he hated attention from anyone else. Every single day, since the split, Ria and Duo meditated to increase their bonds with their spiritual counterparts. As she further mastered her own power, following the lessons Sid left with her, Ria began to develop additional spiritual markings, streaks of artistic light. These patterns on her skin were similar to Duo's natural markings, but only appeared when she was focusing her strength. Ria explained to Duo that it took time and effort to connect with Abby mentally. Even then, it still took a conduit, her irreplaceable diary, to fully bridge the gap between realms. Duo's conduit seemed to be his blade, which was obviously very dangerous and frightening to evoke one-on-one. There were plenty of times she and Abby had to shut down his link to his darker half to preserve his own sanity. It took weeks of nothing but affirming control until Duo was able to freely elicit the vengeance found inside of him. At first, the entity didn't even speak. The child had to earn that right. He had to assert his own dominance, replacing whatever influence Cain held on it. In the present, the vengeance, nicknamed Venji by Ria, spoke very rarely, but it did follow his commands. In his mind while meditating, Duo would be mentally sparring with the dark form to further his superiority. Ria's presence alone also helped in these trials, like a star guiding him on the right track as she moderated with Abby. On one of these days, however, Duo felt a disturbance in Ria's equilibrium. "Ria?" Duo urged, opening his gray eyes from his own mental chambers. She was visibly trembling, breaking out in a sweat while Abby was flickering in and out of existence like a low-battery flashlight. Duo also noticed a new set of markings that were added to her empowered look. 2 golden streaks, one under each of her eyes, spiritually highlighted the trauma she was fighting. "Ria, wake up!" the boy shouted, grabbing a hold of her wrists to break the connection. He pulled her back to reality as she took in a ragged breath, like a lifeguard rescuing someone drowning in a deep ocean. Her teary eyes stayed stuck on the boy, who awkwardly yet delicately held her tiny hands. Like a statue breaking free from its stone, the petrified girl dove into Duo's shoulder, his skin feeling the dampness of tears being released. Duo, it was him, the man who tortured me, the evil man from my nightmare last night. I couldn't get away from him. He was going to hurt me again, she sobbed. Tortured you? The boy repeated in shock, with a tinge of venom. How could someone hurt you? Where is he? No one hurts you! All his progress for control over his demon was about to be lost in an instant. The vengeance freed itself like a geyser as the dark, crimson-filled spirits swirled around them. Duo, please calm down, she pleaded, interrupting him by placing both her hands on his face. I'm okay. That evil man is gone now. I told you we defeated him, remember? Then how is he still hurting you? We have to stop him, Duo answered sternly. It's trauma, Duo, the girl said meekly. Trauma? Duo questioned, the storm around them calming as he felt a gentle warmth ease his frenzied mind. The little healer was soothing his stress, his anger, with her spiritual essence, and continued speaking softly to him. You suffer from it too, Duo, but you are stronger than me in different ways when it comes to that. I know I wear this smile. I know I'm usually happy and loud, but inside, that man, he broke me. He hurt me so much that I'm permanently scarred, expressed the vulnerable girl. Permanently? Duo questioned in shock. Well, for now anyway, Ria continued to explain. I have nightmares about our sessions, when he would purposely hurt me to extract my power. His tools would stab into me, burn me, and he would just laugh at me at the noises I would make, saying I was just a tool. Duo, he hurt me so much that I can't trust people anymore, because what if they do the same to me again? What if they kidnap me and do even worse things to me? Even your touch makes me feel uncomfortable at times. The pain behind her words was driving the unstable child insane. The more she spoke about these complex things, the more he wanted to rain that pain onto the deserving. But they were already dead. So what could he do? How could he help her? As she finished, Duo looked at his hands on her and recoiled in haste. But she responded quickly by taking his hands into hers softly again. No, but it's okay, Duo. I do trust you. You would never hurt me. Just like now, you saved me. I trust Seth and Valentina for taking care of us. But that's why I can't be alone, Duo. I know you like to have your alone time, but I just need someone with me. Her last plea barely got caught in the wind as she laid her head back on his shoulder. But Duo always listened very carefully to her. His heart felt heavy for some reason while looking at his friend suffering. He hated it. He hated seeing her like this. This isn't how it was supposed to be. I've been hurt my whole life. Beaten until I was numb, started the scarred boy, staring straight ahead at nothing while he searched for the right words. I don't feel pain anymore, Ria. I almost thought I couldn't feel anything. But that's changing. I'm no longer numb to things, to the people around me. You showed me this. You saved me. So maybe we can heal together? We can keep each other safe? As he spoke, Ria's face lifted more and more like a blossoming flower, like watching the morning sun rise to warm everyone's day. You almost sound like Seth right now, Ria chuckled. The boy slightly reddened at the comment. He was indeed recalling a talk he had with the mentioned guardian. Ria, I won't let anyone hurt you ever again. I swear it. I swear it to you. From this day forward, declared Duo strongly. Ria believed him wholeheartedly. I know you won't, Duo. I feel our lights are tied to each other, she said before a pause. Hey, you can be my knight, and I'll be the princess. And as my knight, this is your oath, to protect me at all costs, declared Rhea outwardly. She then performed a cute, but rather silly gesture, mimicking some kind of ceremony she read about once. Duo patiently allowed her to have her fun, role-playing, but inside, this personal development was the real deal. Time was a harsh judge. Suddenly, another month of this comfortable lifestyle passed quicker than the last. Seth's condition only got worse over time, even while in the great company Final Heaven blessed him with. It was becoming more difficult by the day to hide his symptoms. The coughing was hoarser, the horrifying nosebleeds were happening more frequently, and the lack of sleep was deterring his training. He was cursed by Cain, and without knowing how much time he had left, he called for a meeting hoping to act sooner than later. Vargas, Valentina, Chase, Duo, Rhea, Ryder, and other representatives of the Riders and the Forsaken assembled with Seth in the war room. This was located in what was now the conception of a barracks for the planned military district. Training programs, battlefield tactics, and their storage of weapons were to be sorted here. A detailed map of the Light Continent was laid out before everyone, with sections tagged accordingly with specific notes of necessities required in the future. Alright guys, thank you all for coming. I'd like to review this past month's activity to gauge how we are progressing, started Seth. His eyes followed down the table in order of who was present, starting with Vargas. Our scouts have reported very little enemy activity since we have secured the northern and central areas of the continent. The people are comfortable and confident in Final Heaven. All that remains is the southern border, which shouldn't take long to contain, reported Vargas. Sounds good. Just remember, we do not conquer, we unite, said Seth with a smile. His eyes moved over to Valentina, who cleared her throat before speaking. Food and water supplies seem to be plentiful, which is good since we have recently begun our combat training for the volunteers. In my opinion, I think it would be beneficial for every citizen to have some semblance of self-defense training. It's an important skill to have in this world, recommended the professional. Seth nodded. I agree. That sort of training has saved my skin more than once. You, Shannon, and Talia have been great instructors so far. Next, his eyes dropped lower and found the ever-beaming face of Rhea, who was always ready to speak. Have you guys seen the marketplace lately? It's practically doubled in size from a month ago. There are so many cool crafts and delicious treats there. Plus, trading around the continent has steadily grown, so we always got something new coming in, she cheered, jubilant as ever. Every day I wake up I see a new shop opening up. Not to mention the weather has been splendid, which helps promote travel for trade, Seth added. Next in line was her shadow, Duo, who looked much healthier after months of good nourishment and great company. I think it's time to put our training to the test. I'd like to know how far I've come since that day, stated the boy with determination. Seth was happy to see someone else who was eager to get things moving and worked off of it. I'm glad you brought that up, Duo. I feel we are in our prime right now as a community, but we have to keep something in mind. We may be doing well ourselves, but our enemy has had the same amount of time on their continent. We also know that what our enemy is capable of. We were lucky that Abby was powerful enough to keep Cain back last time, but I don't think we will get that chance again. Cain will grow stronger and adapt, just like us, Vargas said, waiting to see where Seth was going with this. Exactly, and I think it's time to strike back before they do, he revealed. Everyone stiffened from this shocking declaration, and an uneasiness filled the room. Seth, are you sure you're ready to go so soon? Questioned Vargas. If we are ready, we shouldn't wait any longer. I am a sniper, an observer. Watching the world through a magnifying lens brings perspective. I have seen nothing but brutality and lack of empathy through the scope of my rifle. I've done nothing but watch the world, New Eden, from the outside. I'm tired of watching. It's time to make my shots count. Ryder, the wave is ready to go, right? He called over. Of course, I've field tested it multiple times in the past week, and it is stuck to the teeth. She's ready to take on those waters, Ryder stated confidently. The Forsaken representatives were chatting amongst themselves ever since Seth mentioned wanting to depart. After Ryder finished his piece, one of them spoke up. "Aye, sir. The Forsaken would like to join you on this voyage. We were never able to find our captain after the split. There's a chance he could have ended up on their land. Also, we've been cooped up long enough. We want to see the world for once." "That's a good idea. Desi would be a great asset to our cause," Valentina added. "We plan on doing the same operations we performed here over there, so hopefully he shows up," replied the moderator of the meeting. Seth's answer earned him more respect from the vigilantes, but Chase interrupted with a bark aimed at him, expressing his paranoia. "What if the enemy wants us to leave? We are taking some of our best humans." "I know, but that's the risk we gotta take, it seems," Seth sighed. "The big decision that will either help us or destroy us." "I'll stay. It's too risky for me to come along. I'll watch over Final Heaven while you are gone. I'll just slow you down anyways, right?" Vargas said with a smirk. "We are bound to rescue some fools when we get there. I'll bring it back on the wave while you move deeper into the continent," Ryder suggested. "Seth, don't forget about the captives as well," Valentina said with pleading eyes. She still believed her people, the people of New Haven who roamed this land before Final Heaven was founded, were still out there after being taken as slaves by the hand of sin. She especially had faith that her father, her martial arts teacher, was waiting for her to prove herself to him. "I haven't forgotten my promise to save them," Seth assured. "Get the Forsaken together and ready to go. The Riders will continue to grow and empower the Light Continent. Vargas will manage and keep our home safe. Tina and Chase, I need you to keep an eye on me." The pair nodded in response, the lady smiling while the dog barked about how there was no way he was leaving without him. "Don't worry, boss. Final Heaven will be safe and sound while you're away," said a Rider representative. "I know you won't disappoint me, boys. I'll fire up the engine," exclaimed Ryder before exiting the room with his crew. "May the light be with us all," concluded Vargas with a deep breath. Everyone started to leave before a soft voice asked a question. "What about us, Seth?" Seth looked at the inseparable parallels and remembered what Cain said about them. A symbol of the impossible. But Seth saw them as a symbol of hope. "Pack your things, kids. Looks like we're going on a vacation," he declared. Ria exclaimed in utter joy, jumping and dancing around with duo and sheer excitement that could only be found in her. As their final preparations wrapped up, the doors to Ryder's Harbor began opening to release his latest invention. The Wave was a sleek, aerodynamically designed battlecruiser, with one side displaying a posing pinup model across the entire hull. The other side had the cute dog head of his mascot, Carbonito, with the trademark of his ship displayed on it like a sponsor. Cannons were outfitted on all sides, with the larger main artillery on the front deck. The central bridge and power suppliers stood above these to easily spot incoming land or enemies. Many windows were fitted across the hull on both sides of the naval beast, where even more secrets laid, especially in the engine. Civilians gathered near the constructed harbor to bid their departing heroes farewell and safe travels. Vargas was the last to see them, saluting each of them as they arrived at the final drawbridge and embracing only Ria and Valentina. When Seth approached, he shook his hand firmly. "Don't die on me out there, kid," said Vargas in all seriousness. "Don't die of boredom while I'm away," Seth retorted. The older man couldn't help but smirk at his contagious optimism and watched as they all boarded the supreme vessel. With the sound of its rumbling horn, the Wave began its departure, and the passengers waved bye to their home, hoping they would see it again sooner than later. The floating mass of hope broke through the waters of destiny, heading in the gloomy direction the uncharted dark continent waited. Little did they know, however, that their enemies' eyes were also observing their departure. A figure in a dark cloak was patiently waiting for this exact moment, shrouded in enough darkness to withstand the incompatible continent. They watched from afar on a desolate mountainside, the smoky essence of their robe polluting the air around them like burning incense. It was none other than the unseen shadow, Lucy, doing what she did best. Her reconnaissance mission of the entire continent was inspected with great scrutiny. At this point in history, darkness was one step ahead. "Mistress, they are finally departing," she spoke into the empty air. A voice swirled through her head like smooth silk being gently wrapped around her dome. "Wonderful. You can now leave that vile land. Make sure they drown at sea for their hubris." "As you wish, mistress," the observer replied, with a devilish smile stretched across her face. So there you have it. That is the third chapter of the Two Sides of Corruption. So now you understand what I meant by this vibe and this tension and suspense that will now be constantly following Seth because of this corruption, this parasite that is dwelling inside of him. At any moment, something could go very wrong when it comes to Seth. There's no longer this comfort of having the main hero around, and that's what makes this part especially so awesome to me. And I hope you guys also enjoy it. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.